It started quietly, almost politely, the way nights begin when nobody expects history to show up uninvited. The arena was full but unsettled, buzzing without direction, a low static hum that felt more like waiting than excitement. People talked because silence felt unsafe, and every cheer sounded forced, like the crowd was convincing itself that this was just another show. Commentary tried to keep rhythm, filling space with routine observations, but even their voices carried a stiffness that refused to relax. Something about the night felt misaligned, as if the schedule promised familiarity while the air itself disagreed. Cameras caught faces scanning the stage longer than necessary, eyes lingering where nothing was happening yet. Time stretched thin. Matches passed, but attention drifted backward, toward the entrance, toward the unknown possibility that kept breathing down everyone's neck. No rumor was confirmed, yet the idea of disruption hung there, unspoken, heavy. Security stood straighter than usual. Production staff moved with clipped urgency. It was not fear exactly, more like anticipation poisoned by doubt. When the lights dimmed between segments, the silence that followed felt deliberate, almost confrontational. People stopped clapping. Commentary hesitated, sentences trailing off, unsure whether to reset or retreat. The crowd didn't boo or chant, and waiting became its own form of tension. This was not the electric build of a surprise, but the slow dread of realizing control might already be lost. In that stillness, the idea of Jade Cargill's return didn't feel exciting. It felt intrusive. It felt like a question nobody had agreed to ask. Her absence had left a vacuum, but vacuums don't always pull gently. Sometimes they collapse. The arena felt like it was bracing, shoulders tight, breath shallow, preparing for impact without knowing from where. Whatever was coming wasn't going to save the show. It was going to interrupt it. That interruption carried weight before it carried sound, a pressure that settled into the seats and pressed against ribs. People checked phones without knowing why, refreshing nothing, searching for reassurance that tonight still followed rules. Even seasoned fans sensed boundaries blurring. The thin line between performance and consequence starting to smear. There was no countdown to comfort, no familiar beat to lean on, only the collective awareness that something irreversible was approaching. Breaths shortened, shoulders stiffened, and anticipation stopped feeling like entertainment and started feeling like exposure. The show moved forward, but emotionally everyone was standing still, waiting to see who would blink first. It was the kind of quiet that remembers you afterward, the kind that changes how a night gets retold. No one knew it yet, but this discomfort was the opening chapter of something heavier. Once it began, there would be no clean way to step back. The room held that truth like a held breath, aching. Nothing had happened yet, and already everything felt different. It was the warning before the storm, minus the thunder. Only the weight remained. Waiting made it worse. So did silence. Everywhere. The moment arrived without ceremony, without permission, and that was what made it dangerous. The screen didn't flare, and the music didn't rush in to tell people how to feel. Instead, there was a pause that stretched just long enough to feel wrong, long enough for confusion to ripple outward like a crack in glass. Commentary spoke, then stopped, voices lowering as if they'd wandered into a room they weren't meant to enter. The crowd reacted in fragments, a gasp here, a stunned stillness there. No unified roar, no release, just disbelief settling in layers. When Jade Cargill appeared, it wasn't triumphant. It was heavy. She moved slowly, deliberately, as if the air itself resisted her presence. There was no smile to reassure, no gesture to invite approval. Her face carried something unreadable, not anger, not confidence, but a calm that felt colder than either. The silence grew louder with every step. People didn't know whether to cheer or retreat into themselves, and that uncertainty fractured the room. Some stood frozen. Others sat back down, hands covering mouths, as if they'd just realized they were witnesses, not fans. Commentary struggled to anchor the moment, words sounding thin, nervous, almost apologetic. This wasn't framed as a comeback. It felt like an arrival that demanded accountability. Jade didn't acknowledge the audience. She didn't rush the ring. She owned the space by refusing to fill it. Each step felt like a reminder that momentum could be taken, not given. The lighting made her presence feel stark, unavoidable, casting long shadows that emphasized how alone she was out there, and how alone everyone suddenly felt watching her. The crowd noise shifted into something uneasy, a mix of awe and discomfort, the kind of reaction people have when they realize they're seeing something they didn't ask for but can't look away from. There was no heroic posture, no promise of redemption, just a woman standing in a place that suddenly felt smaller, heavier, like it had to adjust to contain her. The ring waited, the roster waited, the company waited. Jade stopped, looked out, and let the moment suffocate. In that pause, the truth settled in. This wasn't about reaction. It was about presence. And her presence felt like a challenge without words, a reminder that control is fragile. The entrance ended not with a pose, but with a silence so complete, it felt like the building itself was holding its breath, afraid of what acknowledging her fully might mean. Nothing exploded, nothing resolved. The discomfort stayed, and that was the point. The industry had just been reminded that returns aren't always gifts. Sometimes they are warnings. After the entrance, the noise returned slowly, but it didn't restore comfort. Backstage, the atmosphere shifted in ways people would only admit later. Conversations stopped when Jade passed. Lockers closed more quietly. Eyes followed her without wanting to be caught doing it. Wrestlers who had felt secure hours earlier suddenly recalculated their futures in real time, realizing that the landscape had changed without asking their permission. Fear didn't look like panic. It looked like professionalism tightened into something brittle. Authority figures spoke in measured tones, but the pressure was visible, etched into posture and pacing. Plans that had felt solid now felt provisional. Media phones lit up, questions flooding in faster than answers could be formed. Was this the right move? Was the timing intentional? Was anyone prepared for what this meant? Jade didn't give interviews. She didn't clarify. The silence followed her, stretching into hallways and production meetings, forcing everyone else to fill the gaps with speculation. Public debate fractured immediately. Some called it powerful. Others called it reckless. Many admitted it made them uncomfortable and couldn't explain why. That discomfort became the headline. Legacy weighed heavily on Jade's shoulders, not as expectation, but as burden. Every step she took now carried consequence beyond performance. Back home, the cost was quieter, but no less real. Family felt the shift in attention, the sudden intensity, the way a return could reopen wounds instead of closing chapters. This wasn't a clean narrative. It was messy, unresolved, human. The locker room understood that. They felt it in their bones. The question wasn't who Jade would face next. It was what her presence demanded from everyone else. Some welcomed the challenge. Others feared exposure. The company moved forward because it had to, but the ground felt less stable. Nothing about the night fit neatly into highlight reels. It lingered instead, replayed in private moments, in late-night conversations, in the uneasy awareness that the balance of power had shifted. Jade hadn't said a word, and yet she'd spoken louder than anyone. The return didn't unify, it divided. And in that division, everyone saw themselves more clearly than they wanted to. Chapter 4. In the days that followed, the tension refused to dissipate. Meetings were held to address reactions, but language failed to soften what people felt. This wasn't controversy born from scandal. It was discomfort born from honesty. Jade's return forced a reckoning with narratives that had been carefully managed, images that had been polished to protect everyone involved. Now, those images cracked. Wrestlers spoke quietly about pressure they hadn't felt in years, about the fear of being measured against something uncompromising. Authority figures balanced confidence with caution, aware that every decision now carried amplified consequences. Fans argued online, dissecting body language, timing, intention, projecting meaning onto silence because silence demanded interpretation. Jade remained distant, not out of arrogance, but out of control. She understood the weight of being watched, of being blamed, of being expected to carry more than one person should. The company adjusted storylines, not to accommodate her, but to survive the shift she represented. Some opportunities vanished. Others emerged, sharper, riskier. Nothing felt safe anymore. And safety, people realized, had been an illusion. The emotional cost surfaced in unexpected places. Doubt crept into confidence. Motivation tangled with resentment. Pride wrestled with fear. Jade trained, traveled, existed under scrutiny that felt heavier than applause ever could. She hadn't returned to be celebrated. She'd returned to confront something unfinished. The industry felt that confrontation like a bruise, tender and unavoidable. Every appearance reminded people of that first moment, that entrance that refused to reassure. The memory didn't fade, it deepened. And with it, the understanding that this wasn't a phase, it was a shift. People adjusted because they had to, but comfort never fully returned. The silence lingered, not empty, but loaded, asking questions no one could answer without admitting vulnerability. Jade carried that silence with her, and everyone else carried their reaction to it, unsure which was heavier. Chapter 5. Time passed, but the weight remained. Jade's return stopped being news and started being context, the lens through which everything else was viewed. Wins felt sharper, losses felt heavier. The audience watched differently now, less eager to be told how to feel, more aware of the cost behind every moment. Jade didn't soften, she didn't explain. She existed with intention, understanding that clarity would only dilute what had already been said without words. The company adapted, the roster adapted, but adaptation came with scars. Some careers shifted course. Some confidence never fully recovered. The entrance was replayed countless times, but repetition never drained it of power. If anything, it made the discomfort clearer. This wasn't nostalgia. It wasn't redemption. It was confrontation. Jade faced it daily, in training rooms, in airports, in quiet moments where the noise finally fell away. She understood that returns are supposed to close gaps, to restore order. Hers had done the opposite. It had opened something raw, Fans debated legacy, but legacy felt like the wrong word. This was about presence, about what happens when someone refuses to make themselves smaller for the sake of comfort. The unanswered questions lingered because they had to. The industry moved on because it always does, but something fundamental had shifted, and pretending otherwise felt dishonest. Jade stood at the center of that shift, not as a hero or a villain, but as a reminder. A reminder that control is temporary, that silence can be louder than spectacle, that some moments aren't meant to entertain. As the memory of that night settled into history, one thought refused to fade. If her return made everyone this uncomfortable, this exposed, this unsure of themselves, then the real question wasn't what Jade would do next. It was whether the industry was ready for what she had already forced them to confront.